stories. Now, I'm going to tell you a story, and I want you to guess what this story is about. I'll give you a few clues as I go along. Don't yell it out too quick, though. You might guess it. When I was a kid, there was a TV show that I loved. Me and my brothers used to watch it all the time. In fact, we never missed an episode. I remember once I was at cricket practice, and it was at an oval not that far from home, and Mum yelled out, "Something or other was on." Now, I'm not going to tell you the name of this show, because I'll give you the clues and you can guess it. Now, it is an Australian television series created by Australian actor John McCullum, Lionel Bob Austin and Lee Robinson. It was produced from 1967 to 69 and it started airing from the 5th of February 1968 to the 4th of May 1970. Additionally, a full-length film was released to theatres in 1969. 3 series were made with a total of 91 episodes. And production was wound up in September 1969. It was...
Is it?
Yeah.
What was it?
Shh. It was never intended to make more, partly because 91 episodes was considered enough, and partly because the actors were growing up. The TV series was produced by Fauna Productions, and during 1963, British film director Michael Powell had visited Australia to pre-produce his film, The Weird Mob. There he met actor and theatre businessman John McCullum and legal expert Bob Austin, who used their local knowledge to find insurance from Australian backers. The film did well, and McCullum and Austin, together with veteran Australian producer Lee Robinson, produced in association with Frank Packer's Channel 9. Fauna Productions went on to produce the TV series Barrier Reef and Bonnie, as well as the feature film Nickel Queen. I was thinking, I don't know whether I've ever seen that. Fauna Productions is still in business, now being run by the 2 sons of the founders, Philip Austin and Nick McCullum. They own copyright for the original series, while the Nine Network holds the trademark. Most episodes were directed by Max Varnell and Eric Philolove, with scripts written by Australian producers. Producer Lee Robinson said, "Each story has an underlying thought, which is the preservation of wildlife." Now you must know what that show is. Well, it's already been guessed at the back.
No, don't say, keep going.
All right.
I'm going to wait to the end.
Accomplished musician, band leader and composer Eric Jupp was responsible for the theme and incidental music. "It took me a few days to write the theme," said Jupp. "I'd already written 3 or 4 versions and then rejected them. But the effort was proved worthwhile because about 30,000 records of the theme had been sold in Australia alone. The series was shot in North Sydney and then undeveloped Crown land west of Namba Road, now known as Waratah Park. Permission to film and build structures on the site was given by Wangaratta Council. Also necessary was the cooperation of the newly created New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife under Government Minister Tom Lewis and the Coringa Chase Trust to allow access to a further 202 hectares within the adjacent national park. Following preparatory work, filming commenced. The show won a number of awards. 1968 Logie Special Award for Best Export Production, a 1968 Logie for Michael Wright, writer of episode 4, The Poachers, 1968 Penguin for Best Live Show and 1969 Charlie Award for Best Production and Contribution to Australian Entertainment Industry. All 3 series, plus The Meet of the Intruders, also released on DVD, and the series sold around the world, reportedly shown in 128 countries. It is still being shown in some countries today.
It was shown on our TV early years in the
Yeah.
Yes, I've got that here. Some 51 years after it was made. Lee Robinson said the series only recovered its cost in 1976, sorry. I grew up, I've actually got a video of the theme song, if you'd like to put that on, just to put us in the mood for the next bit.
Yeah, I knew what it was, but I wasn't going to say anything.
There we go. We're all getting on a little bit now, aren't they? Skippy, Skippy the bush kangaroo. Skippy, 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 friend ever true. Now, I grew up with this show, and as far as I'm concerned, it was real. Skippy was a real bush kangaroo. He was very smart. Throughout the world, the Australian bush kangaroo was seen as very intelligent. And why not? Skippy was a remarkable kangaroo, capable of near human thought and reasoning. She could understand everyone, open doors, carry things in her pouch, cross streams on narrow logs, foil villains, rescue hapless bushwalkers, untie ropes, collect mail, and even operate the radio. In one episode, she's actually playing the drums in a band. In another, she places a bet and wins on a horse at Randwick Racecourse. And I swear that there was one episode that Skippy flew in a helicopter. That was all a lie. And we were never told. Even today, I imagine Skippy bouncing around out there in the bush. I remember actually trying to whistle using gum leaves, hoping that Skippy would show up. How gullible, you say? And I would have completely ignored you and went on believing Skippy was out there somewhere. I was totally and utterly fooled. Imagine what it was like for me to discover that Skippy wasn't a real kangaroo. Do you know that between 9 and 15 kangaroos were used for each show? The apparent manual dexterity often achieved by using separate arms in the hands of human operators. Yeah, and Skippy's trademark noise was entirely fictional. Kangaroos make no such sounds. But some sound was needed for the series, and someone come up with the idea of clicking their tongue to make the sound. To this day, many people believe that kangaroos make that sound. This is some bad bits too. To make Skippy move her mouth, supposedly creating the vocalisations, production staff gave the kangaroos chocolate, chewing gum or grass. and in some cases elastic band around the lower jaw. In theory, there was only one Skippy, but in reality there were many stand-ins.
Spoiler alert.
I know. I know. It's horrible. Like people, some kangaroos are brighter than others, said producer Dennis Hill. Nonetheless, there were limits to what you could get a kangaroo to do. Often actors could be noticed patting the kangaroo to move her along, or holding her to prevent her from moving. Kangaroo paw bottle openers, I thought this was hilarious. Kangaroo paw bottle openers of a type that could be purchased at any souvenir shop were utilised for the close-up scenes of Skippy closing doors or picking up objects.
And you didn't know that.
There was also a stuffed kangaroo from a taxidermist used for the scenes from behind, or when Skippy was required to jump into a confined space such as a helicopter. That's it. Enough. I'm not going to say any more. I can't go on. I know. Where's my tissues? But even though I now know the truth, there's still something inside of me who believes in Skippy, the bush kangaroo. See, there was a message behind the story of Skippy, and it was about promoting the birth of national parks and saving wildlife. And I'm sure it was a great success because of Skippy. A huge culture shift happened at that time, because a favourite pastime of people was to go out spotlighting and shooting kangaroos. And you know what happened in Tasmania? They ended up wiping out the Tasmanian tiger. So Australian wildlife became a huge issue. And they set about changing the hearts and the minds of the Australian nation. And they've done it with Skippy. I didn't know that. It's amazing. We all do know, I'm going to go forget Skippy now. We all know a good story too, don't we? And it's called the Gospel. Now, I wonder how many people look at the Gospel as a little bit like Skippy. Good story, you know, with a great message, but the stories run its seasons. And now it's known about, but not really that relevant anymore. Perhaps some people think it was a real event, but over time it's just been, you know, sort of exaggerated a little bit. Perhaps some people think that it was never real, and a group of people just got together and created a story. Some people believe that we've all been fooled, and now we believe in an imaginary story. How do you see the story of the Gospel? Is it real? Yes, come on, yes. Is it relevant? Does it matter? I'd like to talk today about how we can tell the story of the Gospel. Now, the first thing is, do you believe it? That's got to be first. And secondly, do you want others to believe it? When you think about it, this has to be the most important story that anyone is ever likely to hear. Now, while I'm sure there's no one here that would disagree with me on this, is it a story you want to tell? Now, look, I feel your pain. People will think I'm a nut. People will think there's something wrong with me. People may get defensive and fight back by putting us down or trying to belittle us. How about this? Instead of coming from a place of weakness and fear, come from a place of power and authority. What have you got to lose? We are the Salvation Army, we wear the logo. So what do people expect we're going to say? Soon we're going to have the opportunity to go out in public with a red shield. And instead of worrying about what people think about us, let's tell them what they should be thinking. We're going to shift the culture. We have the opportunity to save someone, and that's really for their own good. We're not saying it to upset them or annoy them. And if they are annoyed, well, whose problem's that? I'm not saying that we intentionally annoy people. But often we get the opportunity, so we should make the most of it. What do you say, though? It's probably not a good idea to start with, do you know Jesus? It may be an idea to build up a bit of repertoire first, rapport first, with a bit of a chat about the weather and go on from there. People see us as the Salvation Army. They like to talk about that. Like, I had an auntie that used to go to the Salvos, or even someone that they used to know volunteered for the Salvos. The conversation can then easily move on to something like, do you know the Salvation Army is a Christian movement? This sort of thing intrigues some people, and you get to explain a bit more. I personally have used the example of William and Catherine Booth sometimes, when they started the early Christian movement and later call it the Salvation Army, because people love a good story. And the history of the Salvation Army is a good story. Starting in the slums of East End of London and now all around the world. Something like that doesn't happen without God, so tell people. I had a collector once who said the words, God bless you, to everyone who walked past. No one complained. Just be yourself. Tell the story from the heart. Come out of a place of love. Not to convert people, but to save them. We all have a story. And part of our story, well, hopefully a big part of our story, is about Jesus. So just tell your story. Just like everyday conversation, being intentional about showing them Jesus. Make sure you don't ambush someone, because that probably won't work. Probably just the opposite. Instead of saving someone, you may have actually stumbled them. It has to come from that place of love, not out of a place of pride or arrogance. No one likes a know-all, and they really don't like being told how to think or what to believe. This is a little bit of a tightrope walk, isn't it? A bit of a balancing act. Carefully and slowly. If the opportunity doesn't come, that's okay too, because it's not the right time for them. Let the Holy Spirit lead. Wait for the prompting. Just be yourself. In other words, be authentic. I remember the first time I spoke in prison. I actually went to the prison. I wasn't actually in the prison. Let's get that right. I was given the topic of what Christianity means to me. And the advice was to just be authentic, because these guys can spot a phony a mile off. It was really good practice, and everyone should have a go at it. I started writing it and then read it back to myself. What a load of rubbish. All I had wrote was what I had learned and what I was told. It was nothing really about that, so I sat down and wrote with the title, Why I'm a Bad Christian. Everyone related to the story. And they all thought it was really good because it was authentic. The gist of the story was around how we were saved by grace, and thank the Lord for that. One huge guy with tattoos all over him stood up and he said, I know about grace. He told the story about a shootout at a bikie clubhouse and how he walked out the front door and heard a whooshing sound go past his ear. His mate walking behind him wasn't so lucky and went down. He pulled out his piece and fired a few rounds. He obviously ended up surviving, and then he said these words, I survived that gunfight, and I'm here now, so that's grace, isn't it? First time I remember being utterly speechless. But I wasn't going to argue the point either. Later, and I will never forget this, we sang Amazing Grace to the tune of House of the Rising Sun. Whether you've ever heard it. I swear that on that last verse, there in prison, I heard all the angels from heaven join in. It was a defining time in my life. No. And that's the start of another good story, so I'll leave that for another day. But the song I want to do now, of course, is Amazing Grace with a tune of House of the Rising Sun. And it's sung by a prison choir.